guests we usually get, usually not so hot. They're usually not that good. Usually it's, I met someone at the bus station and they were an extra on the Love Boat. Usually for us to go get an actual 5-star living legend doesn't happen very often, but it happened tonight. Because who do we have in studio? Off, Circle Jerks, Black Flag. I don't know. I got to tell everybody. It's Keith Morris. How are you, Keith?
I'm good.
Oh, this is so exciting. Thank you for coming down and saying hi. And it's a true thrill to have you here.
Well, I was talking with the gentleman out front. I know absolutely nothing about your podcast. I know nothing about the show, except you got to talking with a gentleman who has messed with celebrities with his football and his drone that hit Itzhak Perlman in the back of the head.
Yeah.
What he didn't say is when he was younger, because I know him personally.
Okay.
What he didn't say was how he put out Sammy Davis Jr.'s eye. You know, Sammy Davis Jr. had a glass eye.
I didn't know that he was responsible for that. That's
and that
horrible.
was with a hang glider.
Look, you learn something new every day, Keith. And I'm just like, hey, I didn't know he took his eye out.
Well, and he was then pummeled by Rosie Greer, who is playing defensive lineman for the L.A. Rams.
Sure. No, look, you're blowing my mind. I just got my mind blown by him, and now you're adding to it here. I don't know which way is up right now, Keith. I don't know which way is up. But one thing I do know, and this is a segue. You see that segue? How I just did that? What I do know, there's a new Off album out. It's so great. It's called Free LSD. Everybody loves Off. There's a 4th album, right? The 4th?
Yes, it is.
This album, first one in a long time. I went and listened to this because I thought, I know what I'm going to get with an Off album. It's like I love what I get, but I thought I knew what I would get from an Off album. And I started listening to this record. I'm like, this is like crossing. It's like crossing Off with a Red Crayola all of a sudden.
Well, one of the things that we set out to do is to toss some curveballs.
Yeah.
You know, because in the genre that we're a part of, there's a certain set of rules. Yeah. There's certain things that you can and can't do. And we got tired of all of that. I'm 67 years old. I've been doing this like Black Flag back in 1976.
Dude, you invented it.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Not by yourself. You were there at the beginning, though. That is undeniable.
Well, there were a handful of bands that helped create the genre.
Sure. But to actually, when you're talking about bringing punk into hardcore, you were, I don't know who was there ahead of you. Can you name who was ahead of you then? Nobody. Just own it. You're on Mount Rushmore.
I don't really pay attention to that.
You don't have to. I'll say it. You don't have to say it. I'll say it.
Okay.
You're on Mount Rushmore.
Well, thank you. How is the air up there?
You tell me. I'm not anywhere near.
No, I'm. That's a Bangles song.
Yeah, from the. Was that a Faulty Product?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. See,
and that was we were part of that record label. Only we were on the F team. You know, there's the A team, the B team. You know, you have the freshman team.
Sure.
We were the junior high. We were getting ready to graduate from junior high. That's how they treated us.
Because so let me just ask you about these curveballs, because it is hardcore punk. There can be a creeping conservatism almost in a way of this is how you do it. This is what we expect from it. You don't do this. You do this. And I think it's amazing for you to be cracking it open and adding some actual freaky free jazz freak out moments through the record.
Well, we set out to expand our palette, different colors, because a lot of it can be very black and white. Sometimes it gets colorful, and there might be some blue and some yellow and some red. But we had some other places we wanted to go. We have our typical influences, like Stiff Little Fingers and The Damned and the Bad Brains, and we love Blue Oyster Cult, and we're listening to all of this different music. Our guitar player and one of the main contributors, Dimitri, he is a closet industrial noise freak.
Okay.
So now all of a sudden he has me, I'm familiar with all of these bands, and I have music by some of these bands, but it's not music that I zoom in on.
Okay.
We're talking Throbbing Gristle. We're talking Eisenzinge Neubauten.
Sure.
We're talking, all of a sudden there's jazz influences. And we're like watching footage of Miles Davis being backed by Herbie Hancock and the Headhunters.
Sure, yeah.
And I actually saw that tour, but it was way over my head because I'm not a jazz guy.
Okay.
My dad was always preaching the jazz, and it was like, no. I got to listen to Deep Purple and Uriah Heep and Black Sabbath and Grand Funk and
Sure.
Just get very take it all the way to the primitive bottom to the back of the cave.
Sure. Well, you're a kid at that point. You're hearing these things. You're there for the seismic changes in it. Like you got to, like, what was the first time you heard the Stooges?
I heard Raw Power and was just completely blown away. I mean, my mind was just destroyed. Search and Destroy.
Sure. It just, and what did that feel like in the world? Because is it a matter of you're seeing things one way and suddenly it's like, oh my God, this is just a different set, playing by a different set of rules all
different
of a sudden.
Sounds and different attitude and some of the aggressiveness in some of the songs. And I got to see them live on in the middle of summertime at the Whiskey A Go-Go.
Sure.
And they were doing, at this time, they would play like 3 or 4 nights in a row.
Okay.
And they would play 2 sets. And I went with a friend. We went to the early show. And after I was just like, I was in complete awe. It's like I've never seen or heard anything like this before.
Yeah.
And at the end of the first set, the 2 roadies had to come down the stairs and lift Iggy by his feet and his arms and carry him up the stairs. He was completely wasted.
Yeah.
It was like he was completely spent. And there's going to be a band that plays in 15 minutes, and then they're going to have to come back out and do a second set. It's how does this guy do this?
Yeah. And that was just the idea that these things, and look, everybody in their era gets to see things that changed everything for them. I mean, for me, seeing Mudhoney when the first single and Super Fuzz, Big Muff, 89, 90, I saw things differently from that point on.
Touch Me, I'm Sick.
Unbelievable. Like just rattled
Amazing
me to my
band.
core.
Yes.
And those are the bands that are truly on the continuum where you're just like, you run that line from the Stooges to the Sonics all the way right to Mudhoney, and it all makes sense. Everybody has hopefully they have their thing that made the world change for them. So the Stooges was a big one for you. What are some of the other ones where you came away saying like, I'm different now? Like this is like I can't see the world the same way I did.
I saw David Bowie and the Spiders from Mars in 1972.
That's right. Where the one from the live album.
Yes, the Santa Monica Civic. It was played over the radio. I want to say it was KMET or KLOS. We had two major stations at the time.
Okay.
And neither of them, if they played David Bowie, it would be at 3 a.m. Because they were too busy playing all of the top 40s and all of that stuff. But we also had another station called KNAC down in Long Beach, and they broke ZZ Top in Southern California, and they actually played a role, like a major role, in breaking David Bowie.
Okay.
They also played T-Rex. They also played Blue Oyster Cult. Now, I saw Blue Oyster Cult about 6 times, and every time that I saw them, it was just mind-numbingly great.
Yeah. One of my good friends is Dave Windorf, who was in Shrapnel and then Monster Magnet. He was
They just released a new record.
They did. They like from the Vaults tab, the 20-minute jam thing on both sides. It's amazing. I want to. He's gonna hopefully come on and talk about it soon. He told me about a New Year's Eve show he saw, New Year's Eve '73, at the there's a New York City. I'm blanking on the name of the place, but it was the bill was the Stooges. Then it was Kiss. Then it was Stooges. Then it was Blue Oyster Cult. And he said Blue Oyster Cult was just, you cannot believe what Blue Oyster Cult was like in that prime Blue Oyster Cult. Just favorite band.
All the way up to the double live album. And that was actually the last time I saw them.
Okay.
And I had, like I said, I've seen them about 6 times. I've seen them in a room that held like 900 people. I saw them at the Shrine Auditorium, which is, most of your auditoriums hold 1,200 people. And I saw them right before the LAPD pulled out a thing on all of the concert goers. There was the Pink Floyd played 5 nights at the sports arena.
Okay.
And the LAPD that were there every night. By the time they'd arrested everybody that they'd busted, there was like 8,000 people.
Wow.
And now all of a sudden you have all of these people being busted for whatever, like drunk in public, smoking pot, possessing a couple of joints or whatever, going in front of in our Los Angeles court system, going in front of all of these judges, and the judges were throwing all of the cases out. The judges got together and went to the LAPD and said, don't ever do this to us ever again. Leave these people alone.
Yeah, just rounding them up.
But there was a period in time where you'd go to see a band that could draw 1,000, 2,000 people, and there'd be 200 people there.
Yeah.
Because the cops would be out front passing out handbills that said, this space that you're going into is not a pot smoking sanctuary.
Okay.
So don't think you're going to get away with that.
Sure.
And it was ridiculous. All of a sudden, like I saw Rory Gallagher play in front of like 150, 200 people. And Rory Gallagher was capable of headlining the Santa Monica Civic, which was 2,500 people.
Sure. But they're scaring everybody off.
Everybody was just paranoid. It was Chief Davis, who was when you say a pig, he was a real pig.
Sure.
Just a Nazi.
Sure. What did that feel like, that growing, like when the movement, the punk moving into hardcore, and then that police presence is getting more and more intense, and you're in arguably the band that was Public Enemy #1 for the LAPD. What was that like to just go do a show knowing that you all had a target on your back?
We didn't worry about it because at that time, Black Flag, we would take on whatever gigs we could, whatever anybody would offer us, we would go and play. Because at that time, we were rehearsing 4 to 5 hours a night. And after a while, it's like, why are we doing this, guys? It's like we're playing for ourselves. When are we going to get out there and take this to the public?
Yeah.
And because of that mentality, we'd play wherever we could. We'd play on the roof of the police parking lot across the street from LAPD Central if there was a PA there.
Sure.
And not worry about, well, we're going to get busted by the cops. It's like we never, ever worried about that.
So it was just, you're just out, you're doing the thing, and where the chips fall, they fall.
Right. And it's like you've got to get out there. You got to throw it out there. You got to throw it against the wall and see what happens.
Yeah.
But we were under scrutiny by the Hermosa Beach Police Department because they thought that we were contributing to the delinquency of all of the teenagers in the community.
Sure.
And we played at Pollywog Park down in Manhattan Beach. And that was basically our statement was, this is who we are. We hope the music listening public digs what we're doing, which wasn't the case. You know, if there's 2,000 people there, there's probably 200 people that are actually there because they know who we are. They've heard some of our music. They've heard us on Rodney on the Rock, so they knew what to expect. And the other 2,800 people or however many people were like running for the hills, running for their cars, throwing whatever they could, you know, whatever they could throw at us.
Yeah. What did it feel like for you to hear your music, say, on the radio? What was that like to hear yourself, to hear like the nervous breakdown on the radio?
Well, it was a real charge. It's like, you know, we can sit around and listen to it on the record player, but now all of a sudden it's being played on the radio by Rodney on the Rock, who probably he could have like 10,000 listeners.
Yeah, yeah. And he's like the head figure in terms of spreading this music out, and he had the discotheque, and he was the guy.
Well, he would like Blondie. You know, he broke Blondie. He broke the Ramones because all of the other regular stations, they're not going to play anything like that. They didn't play Blondie until much later, like Heart of Glass, which, you know, sold a zillion copies.
Yeah, yeah.
But he was there at the very beginning. And there are a lot of people that don't like Rodney because of some of the stuff that he's done. Okay, there's some sleaze attached to him. But you know what? When you're in a band and you're getting played on the radio, you're going to look past all of that because you're excited and your adrenaline is ready to like make your eyes pop out of your face.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's because I can't even imagine. It's like, so there's so many bands where it's just like, oh, live was where you had to see it. The record didn't come anywhere near capturing it. The most amazing thing is those early Black Flag singles. I can't imagine how much more powerful you could possibly be because those records are still like a punch in the face today.
Well, they're a statement. Basically, our situation was that we were frustrated, we were depressed, we were anxious. There were all of these different factors, and we had like 6 hours to record everything that we recorded. I think we recorded like, I want to say 14 songs. So it was like, we don't have time to be standing around trying to figure out which way the wind's blowing.
Yeah, and that's where all that regimented practicing comes back. Now it's working for you. Because you're a machine.
Well,
now.
it worked in spades. It was the quote from the engineer was, they just kept coming and it just kept coming, and there was more of it, and it was it was like a flood, It was overwhelming.
No, it's incredibly powerful, and it's a testament to what you were doing that it doesn't feel a day old, honestly, the stuff. It feels like it could have been recorded tomorrow. So with Off, because you were kind of, what, about 8 years on ice?
We had 4 years of our lives removed. Now, when I say 4, the first 2 years, Dimitri and I purposely set out to spend 2 years writing the music.
Okay.
And while we were writing the music, Dimitri was also, he had stuff going on in his head where he's writing a script to go along with the music.
Okay.
And the lyrical content is all, he came to me and he said, Keith, you don't have to write lyrics. Your lyrics are already written for you. And I'm like, well, I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. And he said, well, you've done a podcast. You've done 50 episodes of a podcast where all of your subject material is based on conspiracy theories. So we talked about Bigfoot. We talked about JFK Jr. and how he was murdered. We talked about JFK Sr. and how he was murdered. And we talked about UFOs. We talked about the Philadelphia experiment where they used Tesla's power coils on the deck of a battleship, and the battleship disappears. And the battleship, when it reappears, it's like 300 or 400 miles down the coast.
Sure.
A lot of these conspiracy theories, when you get into them, it's like, I don't believe that. I don't believe that there's a Bigfoot. But hey, we actually had a friend who saw a Bigfoot while he was driving down the road. So he called in and said I had to pull over, and when I started looking for it, it was already gone. What is it? Not the tag champion, the hide and seek champion.
Okay.
Like poof, he's gone.
Yeah. No, Bigfoot would probably be the hide and seek champion.
We in the podcast we discussed there was a scenario where a big silver object appeared over Los Angeles. And it was moving very slow. So you would think, well, maybe it's the Goodyear blimp. Maybe the Hindenburg made it all the way over here. And it's moving very slow. But the thing is, the military, in their rush to judgment, started firing upon it and did absolutely nothing to it.
Sure.
And the object went out into the bay by Santa Monica in Malibu, and it turned around, it made a U-turn, and it came back, and it was basically the way we saw this happening was it was pretty much like challenging our military, like, what are you going to do to us? There's nothing you can do to us. We're something that you've never, ever, ever dealt with.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you and your dad actually had a sighting when you were a kid.
You read that in my book.
I did, yes. Your book is amazing. Let's show everybody your book also. This book
thank you.
is so great. My Damage. It's a truly impressive, amazing story, and it really provides a lot of just a lot of context for everything, for all the music. Now everything is kind of, the connective tissue has been kind of put in place for me. Yeah, you and your dad had a sighting.
We had a sighting. We were living out in Palm Desert, which is right next door to Palm Springs out in Coachella Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And we had the Blue Angels, which is the naval branch of basically the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
And they would do all of their maneuvers out there, but it was the Blue Angels. And all of those jets were like, that's the Blue Angels because they're blue.
Uh-huh.
We're driving down the road,
Mm-hmm.
and my dad hits the brakes. And he grabs my chin and he points and he says, watch that. You're never, ever going to see anything like this ever again.
Mm-hmm.
And it was these silver, I want to call them dots.
Okay.
And they were moving around, not horizontally, not vertically, but in all sorts of different directions. And they were moving. I'd never seen anything move that fast.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, he said, now you know what you just saw.
Mm-hmm.
They're called unidentified flying objects. And one of the things that we learned in our research is that in any desert areas, that's the reason why we've got Area 50. God, I can't even think right now.
Studio 54, Area 51.
Right. Area 51 in Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I gotta excuse myself real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta do something because I'm a diabetic.
Yeah, of course.
And I drank 2 gallons of iced tea.
You do it to it.
I'll be
We're
right
not.
back.
We're not going anywhere.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah, don't sweat it. We're good. I can take a call. Let's take a call. Keith will be back in a minute. Hello, Best Show.
Hey, Tom. How's it going?
Good, good. Who's this?
This is Chase from Norfolk, Virginia.
Chase, how's it going tonight?
Doing all right. Just finished cleaning up after my kiddos and listening to the show.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate it. While we wait for Keith's return, what do you got for us? What's going on tonight?
Well, first of all, I have to say that you did it, you rat bastard.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That means you read my book. It Never Ends, in stores now, paperback.
Yeah. And I called initially because I had this, I was scrolling through Twitter
Mm-hmm.
and came across this Garth Brooks video for the song, The Red Stroke. Have you seen this video?
I have not. What is it?
So it's like his pre-games period, like leading up to it, but it's him in a completely white room, wearing a white suit, playing a white like grand piano, and then stuff just starts oozing out on him. It's the most bizarre, like absurd video that I've ever seen, but with Garth being the most earnest performance. And I just thought that you would think it bizarre as well.
Can you send it to me?
I DM'd it to you on Twitter
Okay, I'll
to
check
the
it out.
Best Show account.
Okay, well, I'll check that out. All right, Chase. Chase, thank you so much. We're back with Keith Morris. We were talking about the hiatus for Off. You said you lost 4 years right off the top while you were working on the kind of the structure of this album, which is now Free LSD.
Well, we purposely took 2 years to write the music, knowing that we had no income, and the money that we were given to record the record, we were given the money to record the record by another company that we're no longer a part of.
Okay.
So we had to pay them back. But we have two fathers. Dimitri has two kids.
Okay.
So he's getting by just the skin of his teeth.
Sure.
And we had Mario and Steven. Between the two of them, they had 3 kids. And they got to go out, they got to earn a living, they got to pay the rent, they got to put gas in their cars, they got to feed their kids, clothe their kids, keep a roof over their heads.
Yeah.
So it was like, guys, go out and play with all of your other bands. Go out and tour. Finish that record, finish that new Red Cross record that you've been working on for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And we purposely set that time aside for them to go out and do what they're going to do, thinking and hoping that when they got through with all of this, that it would be time for Off to do its thing.
Sure.
And that wasn't the case. And it got sticky, it got hairy, it got greasy and ugly. And we had to make some changes. But we also had the 2 years where we were in quarantine with the COVID lockdown.
Yeah.
So that's 4 years right there.
Yes.
And because we're going through a personnel change, that's another like year and a half, 2 years trying to figure out who's going to play with us.
Sure, because it's also, I'm sure it's such, you need the perfect people for those slots. Like Stephen McDonald is one of my all-time favorites. He's been on the show before. But everybody fit in that first iteration of Off. Just everybody was the right person for each slot in it. So if you're going to adjust the lineup again, you've got to get it right twice now.
Well, Dimitri and I are kind of depressed.
Okay.
Because we had to lose our first rhythm section, who were pretty untouchable.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like two like brilliantly great players.
Undeniable.
And they're not replaceable. So it's like, well, we better go somewhere else.
Well, that's the exciting part of it. As much as I've loved Off, the idea that you found that you have another gear at this point is really exciting. That you're going somewhere with it that I did not expect.
And no pun intended, getting back to we've got to add some new colors to what we're doing.
Yeah.
Our drummer plays with Thundercat.
Yeah.
Which is a whole complete different thing. But the great thing about Thundercat is that he and his brother, they were the rhythm section for Suicidal Tendencies.
Yeah. Okay.
So they're no slouches. They're familiar with the genre.
Yeah. And what's the drummer's name again? I'm sorry.
Our drummer's name is Justin Brown.
Yeah.
And Dimitri saw him play at the Hollywood Bowl.
Okay.
With Herbie Hancock.
Wow.
You don't just, that's not run of the mill.
No, there's no tourists going up on stage with Herbie Hancock.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to know what you're doing.
Yeah, and he is a full-on monster on this record. It's just, you can't believe the drumming.
Well, he brings a whole different flavor, a whole different new color.
Absolutely.
And it's like at one point, when we're learning these songs to record them, Dimitri would occasionally step up and say, fellas, I'm lost. You know, normally your drummer keeps a pattern that the bass player gets to play along with. So you've got something, if you do go out somewhere else, you've got something to fall back on. That would be the way that I would describe that would be John Entwistle in The Who. As many flourishes, as much exciting, like off the wall bass playing he does, he's still solid. And because Keith Moon's just going crazy on the drums.
Yeah.
It's like how are we going to follow this guy? We've got to have somebody that we can go out there and come back and fall back onto. And that's not Justin Brown. Justin Brown's doing his own thing. Justin at one point at a rehearsal said, guys, I'm not going to play these songs the same way twice.
Okay.
Which that's exciting.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's very interesting.
Yeah.
It could be very confusing, but it's like a new thing.
No, look, you had training for this the whole time. You didn't even know it, with all the jazz you grew up hearing and maybe at the time rejecting. You were getting ready for this moment the whole time.
I was prepping myself, I guess.
Yeah.
But Autry played bass in a band called And You Will Know Us by the Trail of the Dead.
Sure.
And he played with them for 10 years. And we were working out with another drummer who blew up one day and showed some colors that we did not want to be a part of.
Okay.
And luckily it happened when it did, because if we had continued and learned the songs and recorded the songs and then booked a tour and went out there and found out that he's the type of person that he is, it would have been disastrous.
Yeah.
We would have been like right back to square one.
Sure.
So anyways, Autry, our bass player, co-manages Thundercat.
Okay.
And Dimitri gets in a conversation with Autry and says, do you know any drummers? You know, you're a bass player. You got to lock in with these drummers.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you know
yeah.
any happening drummers?
Yeah.
And the first name that came to mind was Justin Brown. And Dimitri was just out of his mind.
Yeah.
He was ecstatic. Like, can you talk to him? Do you think he would even be the slightest bit interested in what we're doing? When Dimitri talked with Justin Brown, Justin Brown said, not only do I want to do this, but I need to do this because what you guys are playing will build up my chest. It will give me chest muscles, because jazz drummers, they're all arms and they're all wrist. There's a lot of flash.
Yeah.
And he needed to get into a situation where he was actually having to do a little bit of pounding and bashing.
That's wild. That's amazing. I'm glad you found the people who fit where you were going with it. That's amazing that you get the right players for the right moment. You coming up in Los Angeles, one of the many interesting things in your book, what Cheryl? We'll keep showing. There you go, everybody.
Okay.
Don't miss it. In stores, available, perfect holiday gift. You want something, maybe Santa?
It's a stocking stuffer.
stuffer. Absolutely. And there's no limits on how many copies people can buy either, are there?
Not that I know of. There better not be.
Yeah, I'm joking.
I'll have a talk with the publisher.
It's when people lose the idea that things are not as cut and dried. Here are the punks. Here are the new wavers. Here are the metal guys. You
left out, here are the disco people.
Here are the disco people. But it's just like the stories you tell in the book, it just is like a smear of you were hanging out with half of Rat over the years.
Well, I kind of grew up. Juan was my neighbor. Juan plays bass. And extremely talented. Like just like a music, he could sit at a piano and play you like great stuff on the piano.
Sure.
He could pick up a guitar and he could play you something on the guitar. I guess he played bass because it was the party instrument.
Okay.
Roger Rogerson, who was the original bass player in the Circle Jerks, that's what he called the bass. He said, "I don't want to play guitar. I don't need the extra 2 strings. Just give me 4 strings. It's the party instrument, and let's get down."
That's so you're just in those circles. Everybody's just coming up, though. It's like what like. Are you just like, hey, you're on this path, I'm on this path, but we're kind of...
Well, also Don Dawkin was part of Juan's circle because the 2 of them played in a band called Airborne, which was a cover band. And they, Airborne had a tiny female singer, like a real tough gal.
Okay.
And... they did she loved to try to imitate Robert Plant, Led Zeppelin.
Sure.
So their set leaned very heavily on Led Zeppelin.
Okay.
But it wasn't the really great period of Led Zeppelin.
No, you're getting more around post-presence, getting in through the outdoor.
Yes.
Yeah. Not peak.
No.
But so you're hanging out with Bobby Blotzer, you're hanging out with Don Dawkin. You're just, but metal did not speak to you?
No, I always loved metal because my favorite bands when I was growing up, besides the bands that were a part of the British invasion, were the bands from the Riot on Sunset Strip.
Sure.
Love, The Doors, Buffalo Springfield.
Sure.
I loved all of those bands.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I'm talking about 80s, what became 80s metal.
Well, let's talk about 70s metal, which leads to 80s metal.
Yeah.
But in the 70s, I'd already rattled off Uriah Heep, Deep Purple, and Black Sabbath, and Grand Funk.
Oh, absolutely.
That was the stuff that I loved. I loved loud, obnoxious.
Yeah. See,
voluminous.
For some reason, I think of Black Sabbath as just being just a thing unto itself in my mind. And I feel like Deep Purple's the same, where they're larger than genres in a way in my mind. That might be my own weird wiring, though. You know what I mean? Like they weren't a part of any scene. Who was Black Sabbath hanging at? Like they were doing their own thing all the way down the line, not exactly taking in influences. It just Black Sabbath were Black Sabbath.
That's a really, really great point.
And that's what I mean. It's like 80s Los Angeles, you start getting into where you throw a rock and you're hitting metal.
Big hairstyle.
Yeah, you're hitting exactly. So that's what I mean. It's just like, look, I'm not talking about the wellspring, the source. It's more just like the second generation getting into the prime 80s metal. That was not that when they were going down that road, were you just like, best of luck to you? That doesn't, like Rat did not speak to you necessarily?
Juan was my friend. Juan invited me to see them at the Troubadour.
Okay.
The opening band was Metallica.
Okay.
Okay. That's the only time I saw either of those bands. And it was a great show.
Sure.
And I had an amazing time. I would play some stuff that suggested punk rock. Like I played the Ramones for Juan.
Okay.
And he laughed. And I didn't get to explain to him, well, they're obviously influenced by the Beach Boys because they're more of a pop band than they are a punk rock band.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I played him Motorhead and he loved Motorhead.
Sure. Oh, Motorhead's the Motorhead is the band right at the center of that axis where if you didn't know what they looked like, you'd think they were a punk band. And then you see these long-haired guys. Like the look didn't match the sound necessarily for that era.
This is true. Yes.
That's the beauty of Motorhead to me, is that they truly straddled the line between punk and metal or hard rock. Through that whole prime, the first lineup is just untouchable.
The common ground that I had with Juan was that we both loved Judas Priest.
Okay.
And Juan, at one time, came to see Black Flag. Now, I don't remember where he came to see us. And actually got in a conversation with Greg Ginn. And we lost track of each other, which is real easy to do because they went on to sell millions and millions of records, which meant they would go out on these ultra mega major tours, get on the bus and go.
Yeah.
And they were big in Europe. And, you know, this is a band they probably, amongst all of their albums, probably sold a minimum 5 to 10 million albums.
Yeah.
That'll pay quite a few bills.
Sure. Yeah.
But he, when I came across him on Facebook.
Okay.
So we started messengering each other. And he gave me his phone number. I called him and we got into a conversation. And he said, the first time I ever met Greg Ginn, because I've heard of all of the bands. I'm not familiar with the bands, but I heard all of the names, all of the bands that were associated with SST, and how he managed to skirt royalties.
Yeah.
And he said the first time I met him, I just it was a really bad negative vibe.
Yeah, it sounds like he's also not alone in that. Feeling that way. Look, you don't have to say two things. I feel like one of the biggest travesties is that catalog is that for SST is as untended to as it is disgusting to me, because this is like as great as American music could ever be, and it just the idea that these Minutemen records are not on vinyl and you got to go pay $150 for a copy of Double Nickels, and the idea that these things are just not remastered, cleaned up, raid the vaults for whatever's there because of ugly business stuff is truly gross to me.
Well, you have to look at SST as being easily one of the greatest independent labels of all time. I
mean, if you're listing the labels if you're listing the things that make you proud to be from America, it's like Motown and SST, and these are the things that truly are. That's the best stuff you can get from this country, and the idea that those records are just afterthoughts and are not being presented in a way that for the next generations to appreciate them is terrible.
Well, they just re-released the Stains' first album.
Yeah.
They just like maybe a week ago.
Okay.
And, you know, to find that record, if you do find it, it's going to cost you like $70 to $100.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be like that, and I hope someday in my lifetime I see a big SST Black Flag box that just tells the story the way it should be told.
Well, we had a meeting of the minds that included Chuck Dukowski,
okay,
and Henry Rollins.
All right,
and the three of us. This was something that I'd been thinking about anyways, because I'd never received any royalties. And it was like I was going to everybody that played on all of those records, all of the varying lineups.
Okay.
And it was like, people, we need to step up, and we need to, we know that we're going to have to sue to get our royalties, because that's the way SST operated. It's like he folds his arms and his lawyer's standing next to him with his folded arms. And it's like, what are you going to do to us?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to need to sue us. You don't send us any letter. We're not opening any mail
Mm-hmm.
from any of your attorneys or lawyers or whoever's representing you. Sue us, because we'll countersue using your royalties.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that works.
Okay.
Which is incredibly unfair. But
it's horrifying.
That's the business model.
Yeah.
And at one point, I had talked with the Bad Brains manager, and they were out here playing shows on the West Coast, and they happened to be in town, and it was like they were racing over to SST because they were going to go in and they were going to kick desks over.
Okay.
They would set trash cans on fire. They would raise total hell, and it would be like, you're going to cut us a check for what you owe us right here on the spot.
Yeah, yeah.
That was their mentality. And all through them racing in the van over to SST, their manager was like, you can't do this, guys. This is not the way that you do it. I had like 5 different lawyers tell me that's the way you do it. I said, well, can't you write me a letter that you'll send to SST with your letterhead on it and your envelope with your name printed on it? And he said, they're not going to read it. They'll just tear it up and it'll end up in the round file.
Sure.
He said, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to go over to USC during the football practice, in the afternoon, and ask around and find the players that are not under scholarship. The ones that could use a couple of $100. And they're like, we're talking offensive linemen and defensive linemen who are all like 250, 295, 350 pounds.
Yeah, yeah.
He said, you get like 2 or 3 of those guys to go with you, and nobody's going to mess with you because they're going to see these guys and they're going to start shaking in their shoes.
Yeah, yeah. The checkbook might come out a little quicker.
Yeah.
Then. So what do you think can happen with that catalog? You said you talked to Chuck and you talked to Henry.
The idea was that we were going to get all of the Black Flag tapes. We couldn't do anything with the Minutemen tapes. We couldn't do anything with the Meat Puppet tapes. We couldn't do anything with Screaming Trees tapes or any of the other bands.
Yeah, who's going to do
it? Was
anyway,
all we could do was focus on the Black Flag tapes.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were going to need to be, there's a process that is called the tape gets baked.
Yes.
And once the tape is baked, you can run it through the tape machine one more time because it's that brittle.
To get what's on that tape off of the tape. And then, so now you can move forward with the recording.
And Henry was saying, we got to like modernize this stuff. We got to blow it up. We got to bring it up to like modern standards.
Absolutely.
And we were all in agreement. And we know who has the tapes. We just didn't know where he was at.
Okay.
Because he's been moving around to different parts of the country. And so we said, well, that's what we're going to do. Let's get the tapes, and then we'll go through the process of being able to remove the music off of the tapes and blow it up the way that it needs to be blown up. In the meantime, we need to get the name, Black Flag.
Yeah.
And we need to get the 4 bars.
Yeah.
And I immediately said, my lawyer can do that. Okay. My lawyer's been dealing with the people in Washington, D.C. who are in charge of, well, this is who's supposed to get the name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Passing out all of these different trademarks. And he said, this normally can take 2, 3 years, 4 years to get any kind of an answer from these people. They got back to him in like a month and a half.
Okay.
And we were all just scratching our heads.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that had happened in this meeting was we're not going to go around and ask all of the guys that played on these records for their permission to do this.
Sure.
Because if we did that, it would just turn into a massive clusterfuck.
Yeah, then you're just
Spinning your wheels.
It's never going to end.
You know, because all it would take would be for one or two of those guys to say no.
Yeah, or somebody to think this is my shot. I'm going to take it to get some crazy money, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whatever be going through somebody's head, you just got to move the thing forward.
Okay, so I have the lawyer that has been through this process.
Okay.
Probably at least a dozen times, almost to the point where he probably has a rapport with some of the people that work in that trademark office. But I said, you know what? We need to have Raymond Pettibone be a part of this.
Sure.
And so he was the first person that I reached out to. And Raymond said, you guys, all of you guys, I know how my brother treated all of you guys. You deserve the name and the 4 bars because Raymond Pettibone, was the creator.
Yeah.
And so the trademark people got back, like I said, and it was like a month and a half. It was like, are you kidding? This doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And they said the name was given to a Japanese clothing company that I guess is now Black Flag Pants or whatever.
Okay.
But they gave us the 4 bars, which was very important
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like you could make an album cover and put the 4 bars on it, and people will know what it is.
Oh my God! I mean, when it comes to iconic imagery associated with music, I can't think of anything that pops and says what it is more than those 4 bars.
Well, there's also the DK for the Dead Kennedys,
Sure.
And there's the Misfits horror.
Of course, yeah. But I'm saying those 4 bars are. It says there's an attitude and a way of life to those 4 bars,
and a right to passage.
Yeah. So that's you're getting to a point of focus on that end. What about the next step with those tapes that got to get baked?
Chuck and I had played a show at the Santa Monica Civic for the Golden Voice 30-year anniversary.
Sure.
Which was 3 nights of Social Distortion and X and the Dickies and the Vandals and TSOL and like all of the Southern California punk rock bands. And the Descendants played, and Gary Tovar contacted Chuck Dukowski and said, look, man, you want to get up on stage and give a speech like what it was like to be playing back then and, give all of the kids some encouragement. And Chuck said, well, let me think about it. I'll get back to you. And Chuck's idea was, I'm not going to give a speech. We're going to play some music.
Yeah.
Let's, he wanted to do a big rollout. He wanted all of the vocalists to be there. Dezo, Ron Reyes, Henry Rollins.
Sure.
And he wanted to play bass on some of the songs. And then Kira would be there, and she would play like some of the older songs.
Okay.
I mean, the newer songs, excuse me.
Sure.
And Billy was already there.
Sure.
We're going to fly Robo. We're going to get a bunch of money from Golden Voice, and we're going to fly Ron from Vancouver. We're going to fly Dez from New Jersey. We're going to fly Robo up from Columbia, and that wasn't going to happen because the budget for the shows was already spent.
Yeah.
And so then we came up with the idea, let's just do the simplest, easiest thing. We've already got Billy there. and we have Stephen Egerton,
Okay.
who learned to play guitar to Nervous Breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
That was like one of his starting points.
Yeah.
So we've got those two there. It's like, let's just play the first EP and not make a big deal out of this.
Sure.
And it was easy for us. I mean, granted, Chuck needed to get into shape.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to like be singing the song so I knew the lyrics and was familiar with everything. You would think, well, you only played those songs 1,000,000 times. You would know those songs, and it's like, doesn't work that way.
No, you got to get it's exercise. You've got to be back inside of it again.
We played the first EP, and the place. This was before the Descendants played.
Okay.
Our rehearsal was after the Descendants got through doing their sound check.
Mm-hmm.
I think we ran through the 5 songs twice.
Sure.
And then we played, and the whole crowd was just. If there were chandeliers, they would have been swinging from the chandeliers.
Yeah. So, yeah. And look, all I'm going to say, please keep fighting the good fight on this, because you're doing a service to the planet by saving that catalog.
Oh, you mean the punk rock planet?
No, the planet. The planet
Well,
Earth.
we had to abandon the plan. Because we were sued.
Okay.
We were sued by SST, and it got really ugly. We hadn't even approached the halfway point because they keep going back and forth to court.
Okay.
And every time our lawyer went to court, we won. I think we won like 3 times.
Okay.
But that's expensive.
Absolutely.
It's expensive when you're dealing with a lawyer whose fee is $2,500 an hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's like big time, big shot
lawyerism.
lawyerism.
Yeah. No.
And at one point he said, guys, we're going to stop having conversations while I'm in the office.
Okay.
You call me Saturday morning when I'm raking leaves.
Okay.
Call me tomorrow between 1 and 2 while I'm eating lunch.
Sure. Just
so I don't have to be
it's not billable.
like racking all of these monetary things up to the point where you guys aren't going to be able to afford this.
Yeah.
So before we even reached the halfway point, the lawyer for SST came to our lawyer in a phone conversation and said, I'm going to make this cost your guys $500,000, and we're not even at the halfway point. So how far do you want to take this?
Yeah.
And our lawyer came back to us and said, guys, it's time for us to start making whatever trades, whatever compromises, whatever, like I had to give up the lyrics to Wasted. I was on Facebook. There was a Black Flag page where the guy that created it was going to be taken down by Facebook, and they said, unless you have a member of the band who is a part of your site here, because you're at 900,000 people, you've been up for about 2 months, 2.5 months, and you're already approaching 1 million people on your site.
Yeah.
We have to do something about that. We can't allow that to be happening.
Okay.
So he came to me and he said, I need your help. And I said, I'll be more than happy to put my name on this. That was one of the things that we had to give up.
Okay.
We had to give up the 4 bars. We had to give up the Black Flag Facebook page, which would probably be at about 1.5 million people by now, if not more.
Sure.
And of course, that page has been ruined because people were getting on there. They were talking crap about Henry. They would talk about like who's the best vocalist.
Yeah.
You know, Henry or Dezo or
Yeah.
Ron, I think was the best. Or Keith I like Keith, but people started getting on there talking about having seen Greg Ginn at like Coachella, where he did this theremin solo that was probably unlistenable. They started talking about Greg Ginn in negative ways, and so he started cutting people.
Sure,
like
sure.
you're dismissed, get out of here.
Yeah.
And so the last time I looked, it was down around 200,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
We know what should be happening. I just have a question here from a young fan named John. He said in Decline of Western Civilization, between songs, you're yelling at somebody on stage. You pick on guys smaller than you, and it looks like you're saying it to Roger, the bassist. Who were you yelling at?
The security guys on stage.
Okay.
Were a little overzealous.
Okay.
And when I say overzealous, these were the guys that were there thinking, I get to kick some major ass tonight.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where Greg actually runs up behind one of these guys on stage and tries to kick him. You know, if I think if Greg would have connected, the guy would have punched Greg once. And it would have been a bloodbath.
Yeah.
It would have all been over.
Sure. Yeah, we might not be having this discussion about getting these tapes. We just have to talk to his ghost.
Yes. And the scenario is that the promoters are supposed to talk to the security guys and let them know that you're going to be looking at a crowd that looks like they're all beating each other up. And you're just supposed to fold your arms and take a couple of steps back and let them do their thing.
Yeah.
This was the influx of hardcore. What happened between punk and hardcore was we came from the beach. At the beach, we're surrounded by guys that are skateboarding. We're surrounded by guys that are surfing. These are people that are just like, go for it.
Yeah.
Don't stand around looking to sort it out and figure it out. You just jump on your board and go. You just jump in the water and you catch the wave. And part of that mentality and part of that scene was when there were no waves and we're in the winter and it's foggy or it's raining. These guys that need to be on the move are athletes, not jocks, athletes. There's a big difference.
Yes, there is.
The athletes would go up to the mountains. They go to Big Bear. They would ski. This was before snowboarding. But these guys probably would have caught the very beginning of snowboarding.
Okay.
Anyways, we have this mentality. This just, here it is. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's not try to overanalyze this. This is not rocket science or brain surgery.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're just going for it.
Yeah.
We're letting off some steam. We're jumping up and down. We're moving around. And that mentality, we brought that up with us from the beach. You also have all of the kids down in Orange County. You have all of the kids down in Huntington Beach. And there's kids from the valley that, drive 25, 30 miles to surf if they surf. But the majority of these guys, they're riding skateboards. And that's the reason why there was this term skate rock.
Sure.
Because they started listening to ZZ Top and Deep Purple and Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And then there's the Germs and X and then there's all of the beach bands and the young bands from Anaheim and Buena Park and the Adolescents and Agent Orange and all of these new bands.
Yeah.
And all of these new bands brought this new energy.
Yeah. No, it spread out from there and everybody. It changed everybody ultimately. But this is the epicenter for it. If you want to, let's see if we can hear this. Maybe you can hear it through these speakers. You don't have to put headphones on, but you can. We have somebody has a question for you. We have Andy. Hello, Andy.
Tom.
Hey, you're here with me, and you're here with Keith Morris.
Hey, Keith Morris. Hey, Tom. Great conversation, guys.
Oh, thank you.
Love the new album.
Well, thank you very much.
Now, do you have a question?
I did. I had a question for Keith. First of all, I love his memoir, and I love the stories in it. And I wanted to know if Keith is still friends with Bob Forrest from Thelonious Monster, and if so, has Bob forgiven Keith for destroying his Sammy Hagar and Culture Club records?
Well, the scenario with the Culture Club and Sammy Hagar, the Sammy Hagar was an actual vinyl album that I tossed out the back door like a Frisbee into the construction lot behind the house.
Okay.
The Culture Club cassette, after he'd played it probably 1,000 times, you can only listen to that so many times.
Sure.
Until you want to punch somebody until their eyes pop out, or you want to run somebody over in your car. I got the brilliant idea to take a giant Ziploc bag and fill it with chocolate milk, and I took like 5 or 6 of his cassettes, his favorite cassettes.
Okay.
And I placed them in the Ziploc with the chocolate milk, zipped it up, and put it in the back of the freezer.
Yeah, that'll do it.
And he probably has forgiven me for that. Bob is one of my best friends. Bob also talks a lot. Bob also puts his foot in his mouth a lot, and that's the way Bob is.
Well, let's hope that time heals all wounds, and if you look, we'll get him a new Culture Club cassette.
No, we
if it's
won't.
a big problem. I'll get it for him.
No, I don't think so.
All right.
You've got better things to do.
Okay, fair enough. Now,
you could
Thanks so
have
much
him
for
on your
taking my call.
show.
yeah,
You could have him on your show.
okay.
And you can tell him that you wanted to buy him a Culture Club cassette.
Sure, maybe I'll wrap it up and give it to him for Christmas.
No, you don't even have to do that, because you're not going to buy it for him, because you're going to say, Keith Morris told me not to buy you a Culture Club.
I'm just gonna
cassette.
say to Bob from Keith. It's gonna be wrapped. He's gonna unwrap it, and he's gonna see it's the Culture Club, the first album, and he's just not gonna know what to do with himself.
Coma, 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 chameleon.
And that's the second Culture Club album.
Oh, so you know this. I don't.
Well, I'm gonna wrap. I talked to you longer than I thought I was going to, because you are infinitely fascinating, and it's been a true pleasure having you here. I'm so excited about everybody. Check, you're about to go out on the road with Off finally.
We start next week.
Okay. And where are you going to be?
Our first 2 shows are at the same venue in Denver, Colorado.
Okay.
And then we go to Salt Lake City. So we're hitting all of the snow. We're hitting the freezing cold. Like today, during the middle of the day, it was 23 degrees.
Sure. So this seems like some good timing for you to be.
For Southern California guys to be going out and playing. But that's just the way that it is. That's when you have the dates, you go and you do them. We actually had to postpone the first leg of this U.S. tour, which I think was probably about 18 shows.
Okay.
Our drummer, Justin Brown, who's anemic,
Okay.
wound up in the hospital. And he had to have 2 blood transfusions.
Oh, man.
And it happened a couple of days before we were supposed to leave on the first leg. So it's like, well, should we just cancel the first 5 shows? We hadn't rehearsed as a band, and we're going out on the road playing these new songs. It would have been a disaster.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's another part to all of this. Free LSD is not only an album, but it's a movie.
Okay.
And Dimitri has been in the editing bay with the 2 other editors.
Okay.
And the movie had a couple of like quick edits, so we could get placed in Slam Dance
Okay.
Film Festival.
Sure, sure.
And hopefully Sundance Film Festival and the South by Southwest. Those were our first 3 major film
Sure.
festivals.
Okay. So 2023, this movie will be
Yes.
out and about.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. Anybody can trip over something once, but you do it over and over and over again for decade after decade. You're a true icon, and it's a true thrill to get to talk to you like that, like we just got to talk.
Well, that's what they have plastic surgery for, when you fall on your face.
And then the next time I see you eating at a place, I'm not going to say where I see you often eating. I'm not going to ruin your secret spot.
Hey, are you a Los Felician?
I have been, yeah.
Okay.
And I will see you
Or a
enjoying yourself.
Hollywoodian?
More of Los Feliz. And
Okay.
I said, there's Keith. He's reading his newspaper. Let Keith be Keith. Just not gonna bug Keith. Next time I'm just gonna go, hey Keith. That's all I'm gonna do.
and I'll
Not
say-
gonna ask for any more than that.
Yes, Tom, how are you?
And that'll be it for the next exchange. But seriously, everybody should check out Free LSD, Off, see him live. You're not gonna regret it. And Keith, thank you so much for coming in.
Well, I would like to extend an invitation for you to invite me back.
Oh, well, please. The door is always open. Look, we got a stage in the other room. Mike Watt played a few months ago when they was doing the Stooges covers. You come anytime you want to come. We've got a full setup in their performance space.
Okay.
The door is open. You tell me when.
That could be a very interesting scenario.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing. I would love it. So let's play something from the new album, and we'll wrap the show up. And thanks again, Keith.
Hey, thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks, Tom.
And this is Ignored from the new Off album, Free LSD.